Hi everyone, my name is Daniela and I am a dermatology resident. Today we're going to be talking about the personal statement. The personal statement is what is usually dreaded by pre-med students and med students. It is something where you really have to think hard about what you're going to put on paper, and so everyone is usually so scared about it. And I'm going to be making it a very general video so that if you're a pre-med student and med student, or you are a resident, you can use these tips. This is just based on my experience, and I'm just going to give you tips off of what I learned along my own personal journey. So let's get started. So what is the personal statement? The personal statement is supposed to be a reflection of yourself. By the time you get around to writing your personal statement, you have already solidified a lot of things. You've already solidified your grades, you've already solidified your publications, you've already solidified what extracurricular activities you've done throughout the years. So the personal statement is that last thing to grab the reader's attention and to get programs thinking, hey, this person seems very interesting, I want them at my program. That is what the role of the personal statement is. It's very important and it gives insight into who you are. First of all, before you even start writing your personal statement, first read a whole bunch of personal statements that you can easily find online. You can ask friends who have already gotten into med school or gotten into their residency programs and ask them if you can take a look at their personal statements. However, it's just to give you ideas to see how it's structured, because honestly, sometimes when you read someone's personal statement, it gives you more anxiety because you're like, wow, this person played a sport. I've never played a sport before. Like, what am I gonna talk about? So don't stress yourself out like that. Just so you read the different personal statements just to help give you different ideas for yourself and see how, what different methods different people took to address the personal statement. Show them how you are unique. Now that, I think, is what makes a personal statement so scary, is trying to prove how you are so unique and why a program should take you. However, I want to be clear on what unique means. Unique does not mean that you cured a disease for a species on Mars. Like, that's super unique, yes. I'm saying to take the experiences that you've had throughout your lifetime and talk about how that has shaped you, and that is what's going to make you unique. How it has shaped you, how you've responded to it, how you've learned from it, and that is what's going to make you unique. For example, for me, when I wrote my personal statements for medical school and for residency programs, I didn't do anything that was so different that no one else has done. I just explained about how my patient experiences, how my volunteer experiences, how my life experiences all shaped me to get me to where I was today, and why I wanted to go to medical school, and why I wanted to be a resident in dermatology. List characteristics that you want the reader to get from your personal statement. What characteristics do you really want to highlight? Write them down, and then you can shape your personal statement to make sure that those characteristics are noticed. A good way to go about it is if you're applying to medical school, Google what characteristics programs are looking for, and to look at those characteristics and figure out which ones apply to you. And even if you're going into a specialty, Google what characteristics those specialties really like to see, and figure out which of those characteristics speak to you and you identify with, because that way you are addressing those programs directly, and then you're also showing them why you will be a great fit to their program. So I would say write down 3 to 5 characteristics about yourself, and make sure that whatever you discuss in your personal statement touches on these characteristics. You won't necessarily say in your personal statement, this is one of my characteristics, but throughout your personal statement and your storytelling, they will get that from what you write down. So this actually leads into the next tip, which is telling a story. Telling a story is more interesting than you jotting down your characteristics and just these random experiences. You actually want to make a cohesive story that attracts the reader and keeps them engaged. So what I would suggest is having within your first paragraph, either in the first line or within the first paragraph, something very interesting that will grab the reader's attention. In both my personal statement for medical school and my personal statement for residency, the very first line was something very interesting to grab the reader's attention. For medical school, I used a patient's expression as my first line, and for residency, I used a motto that my mom always used to tell me growing up as my very first line. Somewhere along in your personal statement, you're going to say why, either why medicine or why the field that you're choosing for residency. And of course, this seems like an of course, but I just wanted to make sure that you do address that in your personal statement. The next tip is actually having several people read through your personal statement. And not only do you want several people to read through your personal statement, but you also want them to be various kinds of people. So a person that's not in medicine, this person will tell you if your paper is interesting. I used my mom in when I was doing my medical school personal statement, and I used my mom and my boyfriend when I was writing my personal statement for my residency program. The second person that you should be using is someone who's actually in medicine, because they of course will tell you if this is a paper that someone in medicine will be interested in. Your pre-med advisor would be helpful, any mentors that you've met along the way. And if you were in medical school, definitely you can use your dean of students or a mentor. And then specifically for people who are applying to their residency programs, definitely get someone who's in your specific field to also read your personal statement, because they will also give you great feedback as well. So at this point, you have a lot of different people giving you a lot of different opinions, but make sure that they're addressing the following. Would they want you in their own program after reading your personal statement? And do they think that they got a good idea of who you are after reading that personal statement? So those are two questions that you make sure that all of them are aware that they should be asking themselves as they read your personal statement. Be open to criticism. When everyone is giving you all of their opinions, sometimes you will not like it. Writing your personal statement is like wearing your heart on your sleeve. And then after you write it down and someone says, I don't like it, you're just like, what? I just worked so many hours writing this. I put in so much thought and effort. How can you not like it? But take that criticism, because it's only going to help make your paper so much better. When I look at my first draft to my final draft, it's like a whole new paper in both my med school personal statement and my residency personal statement. Because you're going to be getting so many different opinions, you will have several drafts being written, so you do have to be patient. The perfect personal statement will not come within the first draft or even the second draft. I personally don't remember how many drafts I wrote for my med school personal statement, but I knew it was more than, like, let's say 3 or 4. And I definitely know for my residency program personal statement, I wrote about like 8 drafts. I was stressed with that personal statement, but the final I loved, and everyone who read my paper loved it as well. Well, all my people who were giving input on my paper loved it as well. So it does pay off in the end. And if you're going to have a bunch of people reading your paper, you're going to have to be doing a lot of drafts. That means you have to give yourself a lot of time in writing your paper. So there are a lot of people who start writing their personal statement and give themselves like 3 or even 4 months. You can do that. I think giving yourself time is very important, especially depending on how many people are reading your paper. They all have their own lives and have their own schedules. So the more time you have, the better. I personally gave myself 2 months for my residency program paper, and I felt like I was a bit rushed at the end. Not necessarily rushed, but time was cracking down on me by the time that the final parts were getting put together. So I would say giving yourself about at least 3 months to get a good personal statement where you're not feeling rushed. The next tip is something that does sometimes seem obvious but does have to be said, is make sure you have great organization and remember that you're writing a paper. So that means that you're going to have an introduction, you're going to have a body, and then you're going to have a summary. And in that summary, you're just going to remind them why they should pick you for medical school or for their residency program. Make sure that you've checked the grammar, make sure that spelling is great, and make sure that when your reviewers are reading that, they're also paying attention to that as well. The last tip is, as much as you want to impress the program directors for med school and for residency programs, what I want to remind you is that honesty is the best policy. Be honest about what you're writing down, because it'll be asked on your interviews. Your interviewers would pick out parts from your personal statement and ask you questions on it. So much so that before med school interview and before every residency program interview, I reread my personal statement just to remind me about the things that I spoke about. Well, I wouldn't say before every single interview, because after several interviews, it's in your head, you don't need to review it. But just make sure that you're being honest, because you want them to know the real you, and you also have to make sure that if you're being asked a whole bunch of questions about yourself, that you can give honest answers back. The last tip I want to give is, if there is something alarming in your background, such as like a failed grade, it's always great to just bring that up in the personal statement, and you can create your story around that, just so that it's clearing the air and they're aware that you're aware that it is a red flag, and you are bringing it up and saying why that helps to create the interesting person that you are. When I was applying to medical school, I actually took the MCAT several times. I made sure that I wrote about that in my personal statement, and it touched on the characteristic I wanted to bring out about myself on perseverance. It was part of the story that I wanted to tell, and the program directors were able to better understand me after reading it. And that's it for the personal statement. If you want to keep up with all of my latest videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel now. If you liked this video and you thought it was helpful, let me know by pressing that like button. If you want to get to know me a little bit better, make sure you follow my Instagram at TheRealSkinImInMD. I'll see you at the next video. Bye.